Hi, Dave. Can you hear me? Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You dare do that.
I can't hear you. You say, Dave, can you hear me? I text you, no, we can't hear you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I'm going to start recording, FYI.
Okay, I'm gonna go to mute then.
Uh-huh. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dave Fulgerson. I'm going to call to order. Sorry, I got a text message there that kind of made me lose my train of thought. I'm going to call to order the June 28th at 14:30 hours meeting of the Nevada Tribal Emergency Coordinating Committee Council. I'd like to have the administrative assistant call the roll for us.
Harriet Parker.
Here.
Marla Stanton. Justin Blossom.
Here.
Marianne Perez. Alfreda Jake. Ross Rivera.
Here.
Jackie Conway.
Here.
Dwayne Masters Sr.
Here.
Don Pelt. David Hunkup.
Hunkup's here.
Tanya Reynolds. Sok Akai Charlie. Tashina Jim.
Here.
Lisa Christensen. Kenneth Quinner.
Here.
We need one more for quorum. I saw Don Pelt earlier and it looks like his call dropped.
And I thought that Lisa Christensen stepped down and we put Ken on in her place. So does that affect the count? If we pull it off, does that change the quorum number?
That will give us quorum. But she's not here.
But if you don't count her in the number to require a quorum.
Oh, okay. Yes, then you have quorum. Sorry about that.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to move to item number 2 then. This is public comment. It's discussion only. No action would be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until a matter itself has been specifically included on agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes per person and will not be restricted based upon viewpoint. If you are calling in and not on the Zoom platform, you will have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. I'll open up for any public comment. I'm waiting just a little bit of time in case anybody's on YouTube, but in the meantime, I would like to, in case Don Pelt does pop back on, and I think a lot of people saw on the news, Don was part of a party of 4 that actually delivered a child on the way to the hospital. And they were coming back from picking up an ambulance and heard of a pregnant woman alongside the road that had called 911. Story County Fire was en route. So the Pyramid Lake Fire Rescue showed up, and then Story County Fire showed up as well. And Don and the other Pyramid Lake employee delivered the baby with the Story County firefighter paramedics. Big thing in the news up here in the north. So congratulations, Don. And when he comes on, we'll have to make sure we give him a round of applause for that. Not every day do you get to do something that cool. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing no public comment, we'll move to item number 3. This is approval of the minutes. This is discussion and for possible action. We'll discuss and review the minutes from the March 16, 2021 NTECC meeting, and we may vote to amend and approve or approve the minutes as provided. Those are in your packets. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? Does anybody have any changes or a recommended motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, this is Ross Rivera. On page 7, item 10, 4th paragraph.
Yes, sir.
It says that Mr. Pullman met with the White House liaison, Ross Rivera, or Mr. Rivera. Was that me? Because I didn't do so.
No, I don't believe that is you.
I will check on that.
We'll follow up on that one to make sure we have the right person quoted there. If it is your twin brother, Mr. Rivera, that's White House, or if we have a misspelled name there. So we'll put that on the list.
Okay. Other than that, I approved the minutes with that correction.
Okay, we have first from Ross and maybe his brother, Mr. Rivera. Second from anybody else?
Dave Hunkup, Reno Sparks, I'll approve that
Thank
with
you,
that
sir.
change.
So first and a second, any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We'll move to item number 4 now. This is a legislative update. It's a discussion only. We're going to discuss the outcome of the recent 2021 legislative session that pertains to the Division of Emergency Management, Homeland Security, and statewide resilience. This morning, we sent out the list. John Backnall sent out a listserv, so hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to see all the bills that we identified we're tracking through the session that passed. I removed all the ones that didn't pass because I didn't think that we needed to look at those any further. But also on there, our fiscal admin staff have done a nice job of including what the impact to emergency management is. The ones to highlight to bring to your attention, we had AB 14, SB 14, and then our move to the Office of the Military that all 3 passed. The one is regards the emergency plans from different utilities and cleaned up who is required to submit plans to the division. The other one coordinated some of the meeting dates. NRAC used to meet monthly. Now NRAC can meet quarterly. We just got to see what that goes into effect. And then we also had some cleanup language with this committee that meet once a quarter instead of once every 3 months, just to make it clear that we do meet quarterly, we don't meet after the end of 3 months. And they keep that language the same as everybody else in the other DEM committees. And then the transition from DPS, the Office of Military, passed as well. We had a nice bill signing here in our office for that. And the only real change that comes out of it, we'll have some administrative changes internally to the organization, how we process time cards and stuff like that. But for the outsider, the only thing that you can notice the difference in is that if you want to complain about me, instead of going to the DPS director, you now go to General Barry to complain. Everything else should be exactly the same for the end user, is what we're trying to keep for everybody, to make sure that we still do all the same stuff we've always done, and then keep doing hopefully a high level of customer service for everyone. I do want to put together a group over the next biennium to look to see what changes we want to make in those NRSs, so that way we're ready for the next legislative session, because that move will give us a chance to put an interior lens on ourselves to see what we want to fix and clean up and how we want to do those things. So hopefully everyone got that list of those bills. Those are the 3 big ones for us that everyone should be aware of. And if you didn't get that in your email, we'll make sure we send it out with this, with the agenda on this meeting to everybody. We'll post it with this meeting agenda or these meeting minutes. Any questions on the legislative stuff? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item number 5, and this is the NTECC logo review. This is a discussion for possible action. And we will discuss review the development of an appropriate logo to represent NTECC. And Harriet, I'm going to turn this over to you. And I didn't warn you about that, but here you go.
Well, it looks like there were only 2 logos that were submitted, and I believe they are part of the packet. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to take a look at them, and I am interested to get everyone's thoughts on them. And if we should look at approving one of these, or seeing if we can get additional logos together. I was hoping for a little bit more participation, but it is what it is, what it is. So I look forward to hearing everyone's comments.
I have one comment.
Please.
It was just a thought. As I'm not an artist, so this is Ross Rivera. Is if we had the state of Nevada with outline of the Indian on the state and depicting all the tribes in the state of Nevada, included in DPS as a logo, that was my thought. Whether he was shaded in or somehow, so everybody would be noted on who's on this committee and what we do.
Like the one that we have, that first one with the profile of the native and then like dotted where each tribe is located.
Yes, yes, yeah. Even list names of the tribes. It's up to the committee, but that was just a thought. Plus to add DPS, since they are a big part of this committee.
This is Ken Quine from Washoe Tribe. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think it would be nice if you could somehow depict the area that's covered by tribal lands, give you a good perspective of how much of the state of Nevada is tribal managed. Thanks.
It's Dave Hunkup, Reno Sparks. I'd just like to make a comment on it. I just now looked at the logo in the combined minutes, and I guess a comment that I have, I know you got the 2 logos there, is with the Indian on the front of the state of Nevada. But I guess my comment is, I'm not so sure that's representative of the Great Basin tribes. My only comment. it doesn't seem like it really fits. I mean, if you wanted to be more traditional, it doesn't really fit the Great Basin tribes. I mean, it would certainly apply to the tribes now contemporarily who participate in powwows and wear the regalia and things. But that's my only comment is, and it's not really representative of Nevada tribes. I don't know. Just my comment. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. So the feeling is if we had maybe at least the state of Nevada with indication of all the tribes noted, is there anyone that is a little artistic? I'm definitely not artistic. That would like to take a stab at it to see if we can, with these comments and any additional comments, maybe see if we can come up with a logo that we would all that would represent us and the state of Nevada, as well as the tribes that that are here in Nevada. Is there anyone that can help out with that?
It's Dave Hunkup again, Reno Sparks. Yes, I personally am not much of an artist. I know we have a lot of native artists out there, and it's kind of sad that we only had, really, in my mind, only one logo representative that we're looking at today. I know it's got some different names, or it's got, they're a little bit different, but the actual outline of the native Indian on there is the same for both. But yeah, it's kind of sad we only got one artist or one logo that was submitted. I don't know. Anyone else have any thoughts? What about you, Danny? You know some pretty good artists. Do you think you could come up with something that's would fit maybe a little bit more than what we need here?
Yeah, I can try to hit some people up, but Daniel Thayer, for the record, I'm the emergency manager for Reno Sparks Tribal Health Center. And I was kind of always thinking of a design somewhat as an all-hazard tribal logo. You know, I do see a lot of other tribes out there with different types of logo that pertain to, you know, all-hazard response. So yeah, let me talk to some guys and see what they can come up with, you know. But I would like to see something related to an all-hazard response. I mean, that's what NTECC is about.
Absolutely, I agree. I don't know how far reaching this went. I believe the last we spoke, it was going to be brought up in another meeting, I think, if I remember correctly, or it was going to be emailed out, a request for additional logo submissions. I didn't remember seeing anything, but it's very possible I could have missed it. I honestly, I agree. I think that it should indicate all hazards. I think the most important is that it does represent Nevada tribes. This particular logo was the one with the native outline was submitted by a patient here in Las Vegas, who I believe is from Arizona. And this was their representation. So I understand why it may not represent Nevada tribes. So the other one with the petroglyphs was taken, the petroglyph was actually from a petroglyph at the, I believe it's the Valley of Fire. So, but I would definitely, I know we talked about getting this together and making a decision but I feel with only 2 submissions, I don't think we have enough to make a decision. And I would like to see if maybe we could put something on, put something out there, an email, maybe add something to the website maybe. I can, again, reach out further to some of the other artists that are here locally in Las Vegas and see what we can come up with. If everyone is in agreement, if we can maybe go off of these items that we brought up, more representation of the Nevada tribes, listing the tribes in the state, and then making sure that we add like a all hazard type indication as well. Any additional thoughts on that?
If this is Ken from Washoe Tribe, if every tribe has their own logo, that'd be something that could be incorporated into it, possibly.
Well, I certainly am hopeful that maybe with this discussion and the discussion of what we're kind of looking for, that maybe we can get some additional submissions. I believe the goal of this logo was for NTECC letterhead, NTECC business cards, and I believe for our website. So I'm not sure exactly how much room we would have to make sure each thing is depicted, but maybe we can come up with several ideas. I just hate to not come together and have one. And like I said, these 2 were the only ones. So I suggest we blast it out and wait for additional submissions. Maybe at our next meeting, that could be, our next meeting could be the deadline for having them submitted. We could see how many more we receive and then make a decision at that meeting is what I'm hoping. Mr. Fogerson, what do you think?
See what Danny's got something that he wants to talk about.
This is just kind of an example from our tribal fire department. Just to give everybody kind of an idea, you know, just kind of an idea, tried to keep it as tribal as possible as we could. So just so you guys can have an example of, you know, some type of response. I do agree it'd be nice to do the one with the logos from each tribe. I do know there's 3 or 4 tribal fire departments in Nevada. So those types of logos would be great, you know, to kind of showcase, I guess you would say. So just a thought.
Is there any place where those logos can be found so that maybe an artist can take a look at it and see how it can be incorporated? Is there like one central location where those can be found? Does anyone know?
You can Google it for different types of tribal emergency response, and quite a few do show up, and the logos will be on there. You know, just kind of give everybody an idea. That's kind of what I'm looking at. You know, when I talk to some of the artists, is, you know, just throw some examples out to them, but kind of make it significant to an all hazard response team.
Any other comments from anyone else?
So we'll table this and put it back out and see if we can't get some more by next meeting.
I agree.
Okay. Well, at the discretion of the chair, I'm going to take an item out of order. We do have State Forester Casey on here, and she's item number 13 to discuss the wildland fire potential in Nevada. I'm going to move that now so that way she can not have to sit through our meeting with us. So I'm going to open up item number 13, which is the wildland fire potential in Nevada. This is discussion only. State Forester Casey will provide NTECC with a presentation of Nevada's wildland fire outlook in 2021. Committee may discuss the impacts that wildland fire 2021 season may have on emergency management. Casey gave this to us at NRAC, and it was a great presentation and overview of what it was. And I believe it was Mr. Hunkup who asked if we do it here as well. And Casey was nice enough to volunteer to come back a second time and do the presentation. So we appreciate Casey's time and willingness to give this presentation again. And then once you're done, we can talk about any impacts that we see on emergency management, specifically when we're talking with our tribal partners. So Casey, thank you.
Great. Thank you guys for having me here today. Again, I'm Casey, the State Forester Fire Warden for the Nevada Division of Forestry. And we're in Zoom today, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen and hope that you will see it. Let's see here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great. So that's weird. Are you seeing it with notes below? Or is it in?
Yeah, we're seeing it just like you open up PowerPoint for the first time, not in the presentation mode, but when you're still working on the PowerPoint.
Oh, there we go. Now?
That's perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So always some technical difficulty with me and computers. So let's see. So just to recap, the fire season of 2020 for us, we had 801 total starts across the state. It was a moderate fire season for the state of Nevada, burning just under 300,000 acres. Our average is about 500,000 acres per year if you look at just the averages of the last 20 years. Some of the things that caused us concern last year was the increase in human-caused starts. This was not just in the state of Nevada, actually, this was seen across the United States. But the overall human-caused starts in 2020 for Nevada were 68% of the fires and 76% of the acres burned in 2020. Our average, just a 5-year average prior to 2020, the human-caused starts are roughly around 52% and 28% of the overall acres. So we kind of, and I'll agree that this is probably because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are a lot more people outdoors than ever before. And a lot of people who weren't necessarily from the state or understanding the conditions the state was in, the drought conditions or the type of fuel that we have here in Nevada. So far this year in 2021, as of today's early morning check, it's changed. I think we had 3 in the last hour, but we had 216 fires so far this year in 2021, and we're right at about 40,000 acres across the state burned. We're at 90% human-caused starts at this time, but the acres are closer to our average at 28% of the acres to date burned. Our fire history in the state of Nevada, this is a graph that shows the Humboldt watershed, but it is actually reflective of all watersheds across the state. And one of the reasons we put the flow of the Humboldt watershed overlay our fire seasons is because this is how fire works in Nevada. Our large fire years tend to follow the big wet years. So it's the 3 to 4 years following our largest water flows. And that's probably traditionally because of all of the grasses that grow in the inner spaces that aren't there necessarily during drought years. So the trends that's important from this is one, what you see from about 1980 to 1999, that 20-year period. That period did have the highest recorded year in Nevada's recorded history for fires, 1.8 million acres that year. But that was an anomaly year. That didn't happen often. If you look at the years that follow from 2000 to 2020, we see a lot more of those peak years. And so we've passed 1 million acres about 6 times in the last 20 years, which only once in the previous 20 years. So we're just seeing a lot more fire in our landscapes. A lot of that has to do with the continued fire cycle, where fire was natural in these ecosystems or brought into these ecosystems and used as a tool. But in the lack of having that, we've got a lot denser vegetation. We've got a lot more cheatgrass in the understory, or brome grasses in the south. And we're just seeing a lot more fire starts. When you look at the drought monitor, I don't think it will surprise anyone to know that we are in a cycle of drought. So pretty extreme drought across the state of Nevada. In most areas, a lot having to do with the winter, or the lack thereof, that we had this year. We didn't, our snowpack, even though we did get a couple big punches there at the end and some rain, we didn't have the moisture that we see normally, which carries us into drought years. So as I had said previously, drought years traditionally aren't the years where we have our large fire years. Like when we're talking 1.4 million acres, 1.9 million acres, those are traditionally following our wet years. What is worrisome about this year is that the notable large fires in the state do tend to happen. So that's what you're seeing in this box. And these are some of the names of the fires that we have. Those fires do tend to come in our drought years. So some of the largest fires, particularly in our higher elevations, because we don't have the snowpack to rely on, the water is drying out. I think you can see that in our creeks and our rivers, our lakes across the state. So some of our largest fires, the Carpenter One, the Waterfall Fire here in Carson, the Lost Cabin, the Martis, those all happened in drought years. So we are prepared as we are every year for fire. Our firefighters across the state train, federal, state, local government working together to make sure that we have response apparatus. We're looking at what's happening with our neighbors and trying to make sure that we keep enough things in the state to ensure that we have a response here. So the National Fire Potential Outlook that comes out of Predictive Services at the National Interagency Fire Center, they're looking at fuel conditions, they're looking at fuel moistures, they're looking at fire behavior, and they're kind of trying to predict based on all of those factors, what is fire season going to look like across the United States. So as you see, May and June for us, we're pretty sure that was right. The South was our early area of concern. Southern Nevada, it was very, very dry and hot. They weren't seeing the monsoonal flows, although they are expected to come in. So we are, and we did see a lot of fire activity starting in the southern portion of the state. It started to move up the eastern and northern portion of the state. We have picked up fire, so July and August, you're seeing that high potential move up north as the monsoons start to come into the southern portion of the state and to the western higher elevations, the Tahoe Basin. So we're continuing to watch all of those potential trends. So wildfire in Nevada, I mean, we're a natural resource management agency, the Nevada Division of Forestry, and we are charged with wildland fire response for the state of Nevada. What we've learned over the years is, and something I think many of you on the phone, on the line here already knew, is that we can't just attack this problem of increasing fires in the West, climate change, all of the changes in our ecosystems that are causing this higher than normal fire occurrence by throwing more firefighters or engines at the problem. We do need to have trained firefighters. We need to have engines. We need to have air assets, but we also need to make sure that we're increasing the pace and scale of our fuel reduction and forest and rangeland health projects across the state in areas of highest concern. We need to make sure that we are so we're creating resilient landscapes where fire can come through and it doesn't become a catastrophic loss in that ecosystem. We also need to make sure that we're working with the communities who live in these fire-prone areas to ensure that homeowners are doing their part to become fire adapted in their communities. and then making sure that we are coordinated in our safe and effective fire response. So we do this by planning together. The BLM, the Forest Service, Fish and Wildlife, BIA, local government, state government. Every year we kind of come together to figure out what do we all have? Where are our gaps? What are the things we may need to contract for? What are the things that we still, so this year we, the Division of Forestry, are down hand crews. That's the primary thing that we provide to the state. Historically, we provide about 15 fire crews across the state. Those are the fire crews made up of 22 to 24 staff. This year we have 7 qualified fire crews across the state. So we're down, we're seeing a shortage of hand crews nationally. So we know that we're going to be amiss there. We did, in light of that, and last year with the COVID fears of not having the ground crews, we did put additional air assets under contract. The Forest Service got a helicopter that's here on severity. And we are working, the Division of Forestry, on a super scooper contract just for the state of Nevada. The federal agencies did put the federal scoopers, or the scoopers, under federal contract. But those federal scoopers under contract move to the highest priority area. So if California is burning, Nevada will not see those scoopers. So if we, the state, have them under contract, we can have them here in the state, and they're under our control more. So we did put those, we're working on that contract right now. Everything else that you see on the screen is kind of in what we had last year, except for the crews are down a little bit. This is all platforms. So this is local government, state and federal agencies for fire suppression. Part of the planning that goes in is we did, starting in 2020, obviously, have to worry about COVID precautions for our first responders, make sure that we were putting all the protocols in place to keep them safe, as we knew we needed to have them out, and getting sick would not allow for that. So we did early in 2020 go into an interagency planning process for how we were going to respond, how we were going to mobilize assets. No more of these large fire camps. We put them out on the line. We spiked them on the line. No more big food tents providing food. We gave them boxed lunches or took them lunches and dinners in smaller venues so that we could actually try to reduce the spread. And we did see not only a decrease in the spread of COVID across our fire crews, but also because of these precautions, but also every year we get the camp crud, the cold everybody gets when you go to a fire camp. And we saw a significant decrease in that because of these measures. We will likely continue many of these measures into the upcoming fire seasons. We learned some efficiencies. There are some positions that can be managed remotely, the checking in and checking out of staff, some of the fiscal side of the house. So those things will be continued to be operated remotely. We make sure that our training, we're looking at local government, we're looking at the federal agencies, the state agencies, and making sure that we are providing the training that the first responders need, making sure that everyone has equipments and qualifications up to national standards. We've got a whole bunch of agreements that we run on in the state of Nevada, Fed, state, local government. So we make sure this year all of our agreements are up. Everybody's going and responding as they should be. We also have national level agreements. So I give credit to dispatchers who are constantly looking at what agreement and how we're going to pay each other as we're just sending stuff. So all of that's in place. One of the things I wanted to highlight this year too, speaking to the resilient landscapes, we recognized a while back that we needed to increase our pace and scale. 182,000 acres across the state were treated in 2020. That was primarily the Forest Service, the BLM, and the state through the state of Nevada. Division of Forestry, though that was a 48% increase in acres treated from the years previous. So we are working at trying to get larger landscape scale treatments in place. That includes, trying to do fuel breaks, reducing cheatgrass. Maybe we're doing modifications of landscapes. We're thinning trees. We're working in sage steppe ecosystems. So all of that is included, where all of our plans include wildlife habitat, and looking to make sure that we are doing the right treatments, not just for how fuel might or a fire might move through, but also how animals and humans might move through that ecosystem. The BLM alone was 159,000 of these acres. They did an excellent job this year, and they should be patted on the back because they won the award of all 50 states, the BLM Nevada, for treatment acres this year. And so I hope that 2020, and that was with all of the challenges of having lack of crews, lack of contractor availability for this type of work. So our hope is you will only see this increase in the future. Of the highlights, back in 2019, the Governor Sisolak signed the shared stewardship agreement for the state of Nevada. This shared stewardship agreement is really, it's an agreement for us to do what we have been doing, but doing it better. So it solidifies the fact that we all have small parts in the state, making sure that I run the Division of Forestry. I have 180 staff and 70 seasonals. And I'm here to manage vegetation on state and private lands. The Forest Service, the BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service, we all have different charges. And so this agreement kind of solidifies the fact that we need to expand our knowledge and understanding of what we're trying to do with these projects. We need to pool our limited funding and our resources to hit those high priority areas as they relate to fire risk reduction. And we need to attack those aggressively. So this agreement was between the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the Department of Wildlife, and the Department of Ag on the state side, and with the federal agencies on the federal side. That doesn't mean that that's the end of who the partnerships are. This was the beginning of what we gave as leaders intent to our staff to say, you will work with other partners. Once it gets to the ground level and we're actually talking projects and designing projects, we recognize that there are a whole lot more stakeholders that need to be involved in that, including tribal entities, ranchers, mining communities, all kinds of people who need to be providing us input. This, the beginning of this shared stewardship agreement was a high level, us telling staff, you will work with other agencies and other staff. And now we're kind of giving the input of how they can make this work at the ground level to push those priorities and projects up to the state level. The focus obviously was on reducing wildfire threat, as that has become one of the largest issues to our ecosystems in the state of Nevada. And the big push, so there are 47 shared stewardship agreements in the United States right now. Nevada was the first one to sign with all of these partners, not just between the State Division of Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. This was really a Forest Service-led initiative for them to try to get their staff to be more inclusive, but we all agreed that this is the right way to do business. So part of it was to make sure that we're collaboratively determining priorities and management needs across the state. We're making sure that we're doing the right treatments in the right places at the right time, and we're using all available tools for active management. So the Shared Stewardship Exec Committee with a technical advisory committee has identified 13 priority landscapes based on risk and values at risk. And the goal is of the agreement says we need to increase our treated acres by 50% by 2025. And we have identified 2 projects per the agreement that had to be implemented by the end of this year. And so that's Elko Spring Creek Lamoille and Spring Mountains Pahrump. So we have begun giving the direction to staff to identify projects at the ground level, start these local group discussions, and start pushing these project ideas up so we can get them implemented. In addition, in the last legislative session, the state of, not this one that just finished, but the previous one, the state through Senate Bill 508 awarded the Division of Forestry $5 million as matching funds to other project funds we might come across. So we partnered with the U.S. Forest Service on a project in the Ruby Lake Estates. We also partnered with NV Energy for the bulk of the $5 million on projects that will be implemented across the state that have a tie to NV Energy infrastructure, but then also expand from that infrastructure to create landscape scale fuel reduction projects. This hasn't been updated, but as of when I gave this presentation last, we had about 52 projects identified across the state and in project. We had treated just shy of 10,000 acres. And part of the increase in, so part of what we knew was none of us had the staffing necessary to really attack this problem. We also have been having an issue with contractors, as I stated earlier, of getting them to come in and do this work with us and for us. So we did beef up local government forces. So we've hired, this says 130, but as of today, it's actually 170. Elko came online. So we have 170 firefighters, additional firefighters hired throughout the state. We've brought in a whole bunch of infrastructure from engines to chip trucks to chippers, masticators to try to address these issues. The interesting part about these local government crews is they're really squads. And they're available for initial attack across the state. So we are moving them based on priority. So if our priority in the past month and in the months to come is the southern portion of the state, there's a large project in the Mount Charleston area. So we've sent crews from the northern part of the state, the western part of the state, down to Mount Charleston to get these projects done and implemented, and then we move to the next project. While those crews are down there, they are checking in with your local wildland fire dispatch centers, and they are available for initial attack only. They don't go for 2-week stints, they don't go on large assignments, but they have been able to keep many fires small in this process as we have them all over moving through the state. And so those were the highlights. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey. So you want to have
Actually, yeah. Not part of the NTECC, but for the record, Clifford Banuelos, Intertribal Council Nevada, Tribal State Environmental Liaison. Casey, later on in the meeting, I'm going to go over the oh my God, such a tongue twister, the committee to conduct interim study concerning wildfires. And I know that you went in front of the Nevada legislature, I believe on April 28th, around there. They had submitted 3 options, for lack of a better word. And I kind of lost track of the 3 proposals. I kind of lost track of the proposals and where they went. Do you have any information on those proposals?
Yeah, you mean the proposals that the committee sent out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they ended up in a couple different bills. Did you want me to kind of go into a brief description of it, or you want me to wait?
Yes, I would like you to do basically my presentation for me.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yes. So unfortunately, or fortunately, as we went into the interim committee, there was a lot of people, stakeholders present. It was a really nice way for us to have a discussion, an honest and frank off the record discussion with our legislators to address what is the problem with wildfire in the state. They were keenly interested in how they could help us to address this issue. They brought in tribal liaison members. They brought in local government, state, federal agencies, homeowners, companies to have a whole bunch of discussions on how do we better attack the problems of wildfire in the state. Unfortunately, then came COVID, and so there was no money behind the initiatives that they wanted to move forward. But what did move forward was a couple changes to my statutes. One, I can't remember the bill names, but I know one was 100. I think it was AB 100. Yeah, they were all assembly bills. One was AB 100. One might have been a 28. One might have been some other number. Anyway, they were all changes into NRS two in my statutes. One was to work with the Nevada, or the one was for local government, actually, because we in the state of Nevada, or in my statutes, have the ability to go out and prosecute for negligent fire starts, but some local government entities did not have that same ability. So it was a change in statute in 474 and 472 to allow them that same ability to, if someone has negligently and willfully started a fire, to try to go after them for funding some of that fire cost back. The other was for the Nevada Insurance Commission to work with, to decide whether it would be worthwhile, which some other states have done, which is try to create insurance incentives for people who live in high fire prone areas. So if there is work that's done and that work is continued to be updated, then you could get an insurance incentive for having become a fire-wise or fire adapted community and for maintaining that. So the Nevada Insurance Commission has set up a meeting. Part of the statute said that we would work together, myself and the Insurance Commission, on that. So that is starting in July. I believe July 10th is the first meeting where we'll discuss what those options may be and what we might do to provide that incentive. The rest were kind of codifying in statute the relationships that I talked about here, like the Nevada Fire Board of Directors, which is something that we already have and do and have had for quite some time. But that's making sure that my state FMO and the federal FMOs and the local government FMOs are working together every year to look back at the year previous, talk about what went well and what didn't went well. That was not well, good English, but anyway, so to talk about those things, to make sure that we're staffed appropriately and all of that. So that was codified. One of the things that was brought up by local government in that meeting was our wildland fire protection program. The state has the wildland fire protection program with local government entities. The gist is we pay any fire bill over 24 hours, so long as they're active participants. In addition to that, we prioritize our work across the state by participation. So we are looking at those areas who are participating because we own their risk from a fire cost perspective. We want to reduce that risk. So we're looking at how do we disperse, and fire engines that we may get or acquire, and all of that. And so some of the local government entities were worried that because it wasn't statutory, though we had the authority in 472 to enter into these agreements with local government, the wildland fire protection program wasn't explicitly stated. So that was an addition. We did add wildland fire protection program into our statute. So it's codified and hopefully will be harder to get rid of as we go forward. And this year, I will just update you. It's a voluntary program. They can opt in or out of the program. The opting out means you owe your own fire bills, which is always kind of scary. And so we are at almost full participation across the entire state for the first time since the program began. The only non-participants at this time for this 2-year cycle is Mount Charleston and the portion of General Lyon who really doesn't have a fire protection district and is now a large part of that district is state lands in the state park. So we're closer than we've ever been to full participation, and hopefully in the coming years, we'll get Mount Charleston into the program as well. And I think that was the gist of what came out of that committee.
Thank you.
Casey, this is Harriet with the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I just want to thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. And I am so grateful to hear that the work that's going to be done here at Mount Charleston, the Carpenter 1 fire really affected our tribe and caused millions of dollars worth of damage. We were very grateful that we didn't have any loss of life, due to the floods that from the rains. That's how it affected us. But it did cause a lot of damage, and we're still, I think we're almost finished recuperating from that, but I just wanted to say that I appreciate your presentation. It was very informative, and I am glad to hear that they're coming to Las Vegas, or to Mount Charleston, I should say. So thank you.
Yes, and maybe unrelated, but pertinent to the group. One of the bills that was passed this legislature, I guess because the legislature just finished, I won't remember the bill number, 270 something, was the Spring Valley swamp cedar. That it's tribally significant in the state of Nevada. So it was put into my statute to monitor that area, though largely under federal jurisdiction. BLM, I think, owns most of the land. So just we are going to begin work or discussion really on how we're going to move forward together. So the first part of that was a meeting I had with the BLM to see what their ACEC, the area of critical environmental concern, covered and what work they are allowed to do in that that area. And it turns out there's no plan drafted. So that's a good starting point for us to come together with the tribes to see what what is the cultural significance of this area and how can we manage it so that we don't have a fire that destroys that or some other natural disaster. So we will be working and hopefully calling those meetings early this fall to start getting a better understanding and then moving toward a management plan and hopefully some tribal led management implementation. So.
Outstanding. Any other questions or comments for Casey?
Yeah. There's one question and a comment, I guess, on the NDF honor camp crews. Are they ever going to come back in full capacity as they were in the past, or are they going away, or what are we looking at for our area up here on the eastern side of the state?
Thanks for the question, Ross. Yes, the intent is to get them all back up and running. Ely, as you know, has been a situation we've been working with the Department of Corrections on. It was intended to be a temporary closure of the camp because NDOC had a staffing issue in Nevada State Prison. So they didn't have enough staffing to meet the minimum staffing requirements for a maximum security prison. So they moved the camp staff, correction staff, over into the maximum security prison temporarily. Our staff are still running out of Ely. They're running out of the shop, and they are a crew of crew bosses and doing work every day. So we don't have fire crews coming out of Ely this year. That's part of why we're down. Everywhere else, we are getting back up to normal. Obviously COVID and having no inmate availability for almost a year has become or caused a challenge. We were prioritized on the NDOC side for making sure NDF had enough qualified inmates in the program to run fire crews and resource crews. So most of our camps, other than Ely, are getting back up to the minimum staffing standards. Part of our other issue was obviously the COVID-19 related budget cuts from the state's perspective. So we held 15 crew supervisor positions vacant in order to not have to lay staff off when we were required to submit budget cuts. So we are able to hire those now. Unfortunately, we're not getting a very large applicant pool. So if anyone can help us with that, we would greatly appreciate it. We have 25 crew supervisor positions open across the state. And I think as of today, we had 11 applicants to fill 25 slots. So anybody who's got somebody they know who wants or needs a job and would like to start here, that would be great. So we do intend to hope to be back up to full staffing. Ely is the only one we aren't very sure of because it is dependent upon Department of Corrections filling their positions. I think they had 63 vacancies in Ely in order to give us back the correctional officers. So they have till October to work that out. And then we will have another discussion before legislature on what will happen with Ely. What I know from the state's perspective is not our intent to close any of those camps across the state.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you so much, Casey, for coming to the meeting and giving a great presentation again. I appreciate you doing this for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we'll move to item number 6, update from the Intertribal Council of Nevada, the ITCN. Provided the NTECC with an update of ITCN activities to include support of the COVID-19 response and other matters related to tribal emergency management and health clinics.
Hey, Cliff Banuelos, Intertribal Council of Nevada for the record. So first thing I need to do is we need to replace Shelby O'Day with me. She is no longer in that capacity for the Intertribal Council of Nevada. She's moved to our child care department. So I'm going to take over. Do you require a letter or anything from ITCN?
Yes, sir. Just ship me an email from, and I'm drawing a complete blank from Desiree. Have her shoot me an email and we'll take care of that.
Okay, so I'll do that with Desiree. So ITCN, we continue to get supplies to help tribal people suffering through the pandemic. People can pick up supplies at our office in Reno. And then we also go out to tribes. We had events for the Pahrump tribe, which is a state recognized tribe, but not a federally recognized tribe, and the Fort McDermott tribe. And then Executive Director Quintana just visited Smoke Bands to arrange events and process to get supplies over to them. And so we plan on doing more as we start opening up more. We're doing more in-person visits to arrange these things through food bank and other services to get supplies out to people because they still need them. We continue to coordinate with Nevada Indian Commission on these activities, and we have like a bi-weekly meeting where we coordinate on that. ITCN is working on a National Telecommunications and Information Administrative Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. Ooh, that's a mouthful. To help our rural tribes get the internet access they need. And that grant is due September 1st, so we're coordinating so we can help some of the tribes that are lower capacity level and also the areas too, to get broadband connectivity in their areas. So one of the things I think we've all learned from this virtual world is some of the more rural tribes have a very difficult time participating in these things. Even simply ordering supplies was a challenge to a lot of them. So we're trying to address that on our end. If anybody is working on the same thing or wants to coordinate with ITCN, please let us know. And we're putting a team together. We have a team together working on this large program. And then I just been exchanging emails with Ryan this morning. ITCN is conducting inventory of our equipment, and we have the old ITERC emergency box supplies. They still are on our inventory. And I believe that Crystal worked on some sort of transfer of those supplies. And I got some recent information regarding that and a suggestion from basically our finance department. And they would like to see if NDM or the NTECC can draft a letter to make it official and list all the locations and items that tribes have received from ITERC. I don't know if you want us to do that or you guys, and if they're functional, and then we can confirm either have like an inventory write-off list for our books. That way our auditors will know they're not on our books anymore. And then I'm going to assume the value is close to zero. So they probably depreciated over the 10 years that you've had. But maybe, I don't know if Ryan's online, but someone over there at NTECC, we can coordinate on that. I can be the point of contact. And then Desiree Quintana, Executive Director Quintana, will also be involved in that. So we make sure that we inventory these correctly. I guess that's it though. That's all I have in my report.
Awesome. Thank you, Cliff. And I'm going to have Ryan follow up with you offline so that way we can take care of that. Any questions for Cliff? Okay, we'll move to item number 7. This is an update from the Nevada Indian Commission. And Nevada Indian Commission will provide an update to NTECC with an update of NTECC activities include the support of the COVID-19 response and leadership of the COVID-19 Tribal Task Force. Do we have anybody representing NTECC? Okay, we'll table this, and I'm going to change this agenda item for our next quarterly.
Sorry. This is Sari Nichols, Nevada Indian Commission. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. Apology. So Cliff actually gave a pretty good update. We are still meeting bi-weekly. It's called the Tribal Food Task Force, but we're getting a little bit broader. But we're working with tribes and doing what we can to ensure that they have pantries. So in case something happens again, that they are a little bit more set and don't have to rely on outside sources so much. It was interesting to hear Cliff talk about the broadband, because the Nevada Indian Commission is also meeting with the Governor's Office of Energy, I believe, and looking at the broadband for the rules. So Cliff, you and I should probably get together and share some notes so we're not both doing the same thing. But really, I think that's all I have to report to the group that would be of interest of you right now.
Awesome, thank you, ma'am. And for the next meeting, I was going to make this a little more broad and take out the COVID-19 statements and just leave it more of the interaction for emergency management, public health. So that way we can continue to have you talking here and we won't have you kind of boxed into the COVID-19 stuff, if that works for you.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'll do the same thing with yours, Cliff, on 6. That way.
I would still like to have an ITCM report, but not specific to COVID.
Absolutely. We will make those a little more broad for those two. So any questions for the Nevada Indian Commission? Okay, we'll move to item number 7. This is update on tribal health preparedness efforts. Discussion only led by Dr. Southern. The NTECC will be providing an update on the Division of Public and Behavioral Health's tribal health preparedness efforts, to include updates on the COVID-19 response. And same thing with you, Melinda. I'll change that next time, so that way we keep this a little more broad for you.
Sounds great. So Melinda Southern for the record. So just really quickly, our Nevada hospital and healthcare capacity remains at healthy levels. Crisis standards of care is still activated at this point. And we are working to give everyone at least a 60-day notice of deactivation of crisis standards of care, if that's possible, because crisis standards of care is really tied to the state declaration of emergency, as well as the federal declaration of emergency and the federal declaration of a public health emergency. So all those fun things. And we're just trying to remain very communicative with all of our partners and make sure that we're all on the same page as we look to deactivate crisis standards of care. So we did just send out a letter to all of our healthcare partners, and I think that Crystal also received that. And so she should have passed that on to the tribal health clinics. But it just kind of outlines, you know, some different survey results that we had from both the Nevada Hospital Association as well as the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. We just kind of wanted to gauge where our healthcare community was on if they were operating under crisis standards of care or contingency or conventional. So conventional is like your day-to-day standards, everything's normal operations, no issues. Contingency is things are starting to get a little stressed, but you can still handle it. And then of course, crisis is, you know, everything basically imploded. So it looks like most healthcare facilities are on the conventional, some are on contingency, and most of it is related to the extended use of those PPE items. So, you know, not changing your mask for every patient, keeping the mask on for those extended periods of time. And most of the hospitals that were surveyed did mention that they could go back to the conventional or day-to-day operations if given like a 2-week notice. So we're just trying to remain in communication with everybody and keep things moving. And then public health preparedness program at the state level is working with Division of Emergency Management on the state warehouse needs, since there's a lot of PPE in there, and just, you know, working together on how that's going to look come, you know, the rest of 2021 and then 2022. And then also, if you guys have any needs for the Abbott Binax Now test for COVID, please just let me know and I'll get you connected with some tests. And then also the state public health preparedness program is going to be updating our statewide pandemic influenza plan, and possibly looking to call it something more along the lines of highly infectious diseases, because we don't want to have a plan for every little highly infectious disease. It would be nice to have more of an all hazards approach to highly infectious diseases. So we're going to be working on that, and we'll develop work groups to also include participation from NTECC and DEM and many other partners. So just keep a lookout for that on the horizon. And that's about it for my updates.
Thanks, Casey, or thanks, Melinda. I want to hijack your agenda item here for 2 items. One is we are having discussions with the governor's office on when we do lift that emergency declaration. And one of the considerations I do have on the pros and cons is some sufficient notice because it affects the crisis standard of care. The second one is everyone's probably seen in the news, we are doing Vax Nevada Days. There's up to $5 million in prizes, including a $1 million grand prize for anybody who's received the COVID vaccination effort already, at least their first dose. We reached out to the Nevada Indian Commission to reach out to some of the tribal leaders, because there are a couple of tribes that don't report into WebIZ. And so we're trying to, that's where we're using the database to be eligible. So if you guys can tie in with your tribal health centers and make sure that the information on anybody that got a COVID vaccination is getting into WebIZ, that way you guys are in the drawing with, well, not with me, but with the rest of you guys, because there's only a few of us that got excluded in the state. But if you do win that $1 million, I would like to at least get $100 from you, because since I'm not eligible. Any questions for Melinda? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll move on to item number 9. This is Nevada Public Bodies Update. Discussion only. Tribal representatives appointed to the following Nevada public bodies may provide an update on their role with each public body, as well as initiatives and projects that impact Nevada's tribes. We'll start with Dave about the Nevada Resilience Advisory Committee.
Hello, everyone. This is Dave Hunkup, Reno Sparks. Yes, myself, David Hunkup, and Cassandra Darrow are the tribal representatives on the NRAC committee. We did have a meeting May 27th, and rather than go through the whole agenda, which there wasn't a whole lot on there, just some of the things that are significant were the wildfire potential in Nevada. Of course, that was discussed earlier by Casey with the state forester. So basically the same presentation NTECC received this afternoon. And then let's see, what else do we have on here? Homeland Security grant justifications were submitted. I'm not sure if there's any tribes that submitted Homeland Security grants, but I did send the agenda out and a copy of the minutes, combined minutes that has all the information on it. And I think the other thing to note is the Emergency Management Performance Grant work plan was just discussion only. So I know there's a number of tribes here in Nevada that received the EMPG grant. And there again, I sent all that information out to the tribes. So I think that's about it as far as my report on what we discussed at the NRAC. Do you have anything else, Dave, you want to comment on?
We did have another meeting last week, and I tried to make sure that this meeting and that meeting's agenda is fairly consistent with the topic we're talking about. I'm going to try to do that moving forward. So that way we make sure that we talk about the same issues. And on this one, we always talk about the tribal influence and how we can better assist our tribes. And then on NRAC, when we can talk about kind of the everything part. And that way it gives me a little better way of how to put some of the pieces together. So as long as you're not opposed to that, I was going to try to make these two meetings kind of more similar than disparate.
That's all I have, Dave. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, we'll move to B, Nevada Commission on Homeland Security. And Lisa, I don't see on here, but we have not had a meeting of the Homeland Security Commission that I can recall since our last meeting. If we did, it was the one where we approved all the grants that NRAC suggested. And I believe we went 8 minutes in length at that meeting. So nothing really big to share. It was more of just a formal approval process of all the Homeland Security grants. Number C, the Homeland Security Finance Commission or Committee. Again, we didn't meet since the last one, and if we did, it was just to recommend that those Homeland Security grants that NRAC did approve that Dave talked about. D, the Nevada State Emergency Response Commission. Lance, are you on? And if not, we probably get John Backetall, who's in the room with us, to give an update on CERC.
You bet, John Backetall for the record. The last meeting we had was heavily on the grant approval for the different grants, CERC Opti, the United We Stand, and some of the HMP money that they get from DOT. The approval of those from the funding committee. So everything was forwarded on for approval, minus a couple of the counties still had to submit some additional paperwork, but they were going ahead and approving them pending receiving the information. And then there was a lot of discussion from each of the committees, especially the policy committee. So we went through each of the policies, updated them to meet the current times based upon travel rules and everything else to try and keep the CERC commission policies and procedures up to date. So at this point, all the commission seats are full. All of the committees are getting full. All of them have met in the last quarter and done their associated duties and responsibilities. And then we happen to have a CERC RAD committee meeting tomorrow to meet for our at least once a year required. We've been meeting 2 to 3 times a year. So we're going to be approving the newly updated concept of operations and sustainment plans that CERC houses for statewide radiological response. End of report.
Awesome, thank you, sir. Any questions for John about CERC? Okay, we'll move to E, Nevada Interstate Mutual Aid Committee. And I do not believe that we've had a meeting of this since our last meeting of NTECC. We did talk to NTECC staff, and they are going to be talking with each of you guys about opting into the mutual aid plan. If you recall, a statewide mutual aid plan of 414A, all local government, all state agencies are automatically opted in. They have to opt out. We've had none opt out. But tribal nations have to opt in. And we have 4 tribal nations that have opted in. And so I'd really like to push you guys to go back and talk with your councils about opting in. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't hurt you. It can only help you. If you look what we've done through COVID, being able to move resources back and forth, 414A gives you the legal protection to share resources. It does not require you to ever deplete your resources, but allows you to share them. So I'd love to get more tribal representation in that group and through that process. And if you look at some of the simplest, Pyramid Lake gave us a ambulance that followed around the northern mobile vaccine unit, and they're going to get reimbursed for those services that they provided to the state through NRS 414A. So there actually is some opportunity to make money every once in a while, but also that opportunity for that liability protection to when you are helping your neighbors, because I know each one of you is helping your neighbors every day, and you might not have some legal protections you need under that. So, any questions for the Interstate Mutual Aid Committee? Okay, we'll move to the Nevada Legislative Commission on Wildfire Mitigation. Cliff.
Thank you. And well, Casey pretty much did my report for me. But yeah, it was a committee. Actually, it's kind of titled wrong on this. It's a committee to conduct an interim study concerning wildfires that was put together a couple of years ago, as Casey said. And then we would just meet, and I did a presentation for tribes and would gather information from tribes to give to the committee. But I believe the interim study is finished, And I know there was actually a proposal or a bill from a legislator to kind of stop a lot of these interim studies. I guess they're going to hog wild on these interim studies. But that was basically the information that Casey gave out. There were 3 proposals that were put to the legislature, and it sounds like that they grew upon that. And so some bills went forward based on the study that the committee did. Specific to Native Americans, I don't see anything really aside from better facilitation from interagency cooperation. But I think in the end, it benefits tribes, these things, these private partnerships, and ways to better respond to will speed things up for tribes. But not directly. Did I see anything directly coming from the input from the tribes? It's hard for me to see it without seeing something in the minutes or notes or follow through. But right now, I think probably best to take it off future meetings because I think the work for the study is done.
Thanks, Cliff. It's John Backetall. Dave stepped out for just a minute. We had a scary potential incident in Southern Nevada, and it sounds like it's not real, that there was some bad information. So he took a call from the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center to make sure everything is still on the down low. So your recommendation is to remove Nevada Legislative Committee on Wildland Mitigation that you are currently giving these briefs on moving forward?
Yeah, it was an interim group that met, and now they were charged with forwarding this study, the results study, to the legislature for these bills. And so I don't have the bill numbers in front of me, so I was having a hard time tracing them down because they kind of responded to the study, and it was kind of hard for me to track the bills. But I'm following through, and I can send an email out as far as to the status of those bills after this meeting that came about from the work from the study, from the group. I suspect this won't be the first type of group looking at the weather today that will address wildfire. But yeah, for now, it looks like this interim group is disbanded.
All right, Cliff, thanks for that. So we'll remove that off the agenda. Does anybody have any questions for Cliff? Hearing none, Dave is back, so he'll take over for the next agenda item.
Thanks, sir. I apologize, we had a little issue going in Southern Nevada I had to get updated on. So we'll go to item number 10, update from Federal Emergency Management Agency Region 9. And I don't see him on the call today, though. Is anybody here from FEMA Region 9? Okay, we'll table this one. The interoperability update, this is discussion only. We will update NTECC on current interoperability efforts. Nevada include the status of Nevada Shared Radio System, First Responder Network Authority, fill out a state and outline the current status regarding the tribal communication equipment. Melissa couldn't be here today. She had to actually take her furlough because she realized that she had one last furlough to take, so she's not being able to be with us. Last week, we talked about some of this items at NTECC, or at NRAC, and she's getting some pretty decent responses from people for the FCC study that we have to conduct every year, and we're working to get DEM to be recognized as the state's 911 coordinator, because we're one of 4 states that does not have a statewide 911 coordinator, which keeps us from getting some funding from the federal government. So we're working towards that goal. She's been working with FirstNet and AT&T to about different sites in the state and where they should be put and how they get put, and have those discussions to improve the FirstNet capabilities throughout the state. And then I don't know if you guys want to talk anything on the tribal communications piece.
I can do that during my report if you'd like.
Okay. So there really isn't much there. We just want to make sure that everybody knows that we're still working on some of those communication issues, because we know that every emergency incident and every exercise always has communications as a big deal. And we're trying to keep that highlighted in everyone's mind, so we work forward on that. So any questions about interoperability? Okay, we'll move to item number 12. This is updates from the DEM Homeland Security NTECC staff. Ryan and Crystal will be providing updates on tribal support contract positions and tribal preparedness outreach. Ryan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ryan Gershman for the record. Thanks for all being here and allowing me to speak on behalf of NTECC today. Start out with some good news. NTECC was awarded some additional funds through the EMPG grant. And with that, if you have NIMS Basic Academy or the Professional Development Series, then you are potentially eligible to be able to use some of those funds through NTECC to travel to different training classes. So if you have attended the Basic Academy or the Professional Development Series, and there's a class, say Dave hung up in Reno wants to go down to Vegas for a class, then NTECC can potentially help him cover some of those travel costs. Or if Harriet wanted to come up here from the South for some kind of training opportunity, then we could potentially help her with those travel costs. Granted, you have a minimum of the Professional Development Series, which is pretty simple. It's about 5 online courses. One of those courses is quite long. However, hack away at it, get it done at your convenience, and help us spend this money and increase your abilities, your capabilities, and overall resilience to bring back to your communities across Nevada's tribal partners. Moving on, Dave stole the thunder on the interstate mutual aid system, but he's the chief, so he gets to do that. Communication boxes. We'll talk about, I sent an email out just a little while ago to all of our tribal emergency managers. If you did not get that email, then there's something wrong with my list, and please let me know. And so with these communication boxes, we've been working on it for quite some time, and we really need to get somewhere with them. COVID really put a kind of hamper on them. So I would ask that you take an inventory of them yourselves using the Excel sheet that is attached to that email. Mark if it's usable, not usable. If you need something, again, help us spend some money. Let us know if you need some things, some items for the disaster communication boxes, and we can see what we can do to help you strengthen your interoperability and abilities to communicate effectively in times of disaster. Moving on, let's see here, the NTQS, National Training Qualification System, or Nevada Training Qualification System, is a new online portal that we're hoping to have live July 1, where you can go in, upload your training certificates from ICS courses, different TECCs, whatever FEMA or preparedness disaster trainings that you may have attended, upload those into the system, and then the next time you sign up for a class in that same system, where you will be able to see the schedule of classes in that system, the system will tell you if you're eligible based on your prerequisites to take that class. If you're missing a class, it'll tell you which class you need to take, and it may be just something simple that you can do yourself online, or you may have to schedule it based on availability in the state to do that. And remember, EMPG funding to help you get there if you take your professional development series, and we can help pay for that. So that should be going live soon, and please be patient with us. It's a new system. There's going to be bugs to work out. However, I've tinkered around with it a little bit. Darlene keeps using me as a guinea pig, and it's has a lot of capability, and I think it'll make things a whole lot simpler for the state of Nevada to track and access and have more equitable access to our training platforms across the state. We are scheduling out, Crystal and myself, along with Dave, a road trip across Nevada. We'll get your 4-wheel drive tires on. We're going to come and visit you in a town pretty soon. We got to iron all those wrinkles out and see what works best for your schedules and our schedules and Dave's schedule. But we would love to come and visit each and every one of you and check out your communities, COVID has been, COVID, right? And I have never met many of you face to face, and I really want to put a face to these names and make your acquaintance right here. So, and of course, we still have PPE. If you need PPE, put in the resource request. We will get that out to you. Get me out of the office. I can come up, do a site visit, meet you face to face, bring some PPE in the back of the Durango or SUV or whatever have you. Pending that, try to keep it relatively brief depending on who you ask. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan, and thanks for the little humor there at the end. Anybody have any questions for Ryan, for him and Crystal, and the great efforts that they are doing for us? Anybody have any unmet needs that we can help you with those folks? Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to item number 14. This is Nevada's energy-related issues. We'll discuss the impact of East Coast fuel transmission pipeline issues in Nevada and collaborate on ways to improve Nevada's resilience. We put this on NRAC, and I wanted to put it here as well. Obviously, everyone saw in the news and followed that along for a while when the pipeline on the East Coast had a cyber attack, and they were unable to deliver fuel, and the cascading events that happened from that. So we talked about this a little bit in NRAC about a resiliency plan, and every county is supposed to have an energy plan to help. How are they going to take care of this? How do we make sure that fire engines, police cars, ambulances still have fuel? But then when you start looking at the cascading effect, how do you make sure that your employees have fuel to get to work, generators are working, and all those issues? Because we got to be looking at, obviously we have fuel, petroleum fuel that runs our vehicles. Then we have natural gas fuel that heats our homes, but also makes about 70% electricity in Nevada. So if we lose that pipeline, that then affects electricity. And if you looked at during the summer months, I mean, right now it's only, at 117 at your place, Harriet. If your air conditioner went out, you probably wouldn't really like that if we said your air conditioner wasn't going to work for 3 weeks. And so we've got before COVID, there was a planning team that was going to get together to start working on this. And they're going to get together starting again next week to start scoping out how do we respond to this, how do we help, how do we fix this. And my charge to all the DEM employees, we had a class last week from FEMA. It's federally supported, state-led, locally executed. So we don't get into locals' business. We just support any requests from our locals, but we have to anticipate what the locals are going to need from us to take care of that. And that's where DEM has always stood pretty tall through the years of the coordinating effort and being able to reach and share information between everyone. Not to do the locals' job, but to see what we can do to support locals. So that's where we're headed on that one. I just want to make sure everybody's in the loop on that. Does anybody have any questions on it? Okay, we'll move to item number 15. This is a state warehouse emergency operations plan, with John Backendall, DM's coordinating with the Division of Public Behavioral Health, Public Health Preparedness, and Division of Purchasing for a long-term plan for PPE and other emergency preparedness response resources. The committee will hear a detailed explanation of the current status of warehouse operation and the goals for long-term resilience. John.
So John Backendall for the record. Melinda spoke briefly to this earlier on some of the transition that's happening. July 1 is a big transition date between us and the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to start to move some of the COVID response responsibilities back to their agency where we've been assisting for the last roughly 18 months. So warehouse is the largest part of that operation. We still have over $60 million in PPE stationed primarily in Southern Nevada with quite a bit in Northern Nevada. The Southern Nevada warehouse just went through and is still going through a very large move. We've left the convention center so that they can start to use their space to rebuild Nevada's economy. And we've located a place in the south that we are now renting for the next several months till the end of the year. That's all we were allowed to lease for under the current rules and funding. So our National Guard staff, as well as the warehouse manager, has taken on that move to relocate all of the supplies. Probably be done later this week, we're hoping. Due to traffic, it's slowed us down quite a bit, but we've contracted with an agency that's doing the deliveries by the trucks. It's several hundred trucks to move all of that stuff out of that location. Then we've got a little cleanup effort to do there. The Northern Nevada warehouse, the lease was extended at its current location out at the Tahoe Regional Industrial Park, and it will be facilitated again through the end of the year under its current lease. And we're hoping to extend it from January 1 until June 30th of 2022, once we get some additional funding laid out and allocated to us from the interim finance committee. When all that's in place, we're hoping to use up the PPE that's in the Northern Nevada warehouse, stock up the jurisdictions as much as possible, and push the remaining stuff down to the Southern Nevada warehouse. That will be the only warehouse with PPE in the state of Nevada. Over that time period from now until our lease will hopefully be completed, June of 2022 for Southern Nevada as well, we are looking to work with state purchasing to purchase a warehouse down in Southern Nevada that they will continue to utilize for all of their federal programs to acquire federal furniture, federal cars, whatever it may be that the state can utilize through those federal state purchasing programs. And then we'll also have a section in there that will be the permanent warehouse for PPE. We just got the guidance today from the feds on the funding avenues that are available. So we've got to read through that multi-page document so we can see how we can do this moving forward. Currently, a warehouse of the size we're looking for is about $24 to $26 million in Southern Nevada, and they're even more expensive in Northern Nevada. There's not a lot available, and similar to the housing market, you have to bid higher than what they're for sale for, and you have to do it 9 months before the building's done in hopes that you're the person selected to take possession of that building. So those are the efforts state purchasing is working on with us and the Division of Public and Behavioral Health on property-wise. PPE-wise, we have a lot of PPE that we're still looking to get rid of. It has to be for COVID response. It has to be for vaccination and testing efforts. So if your tribe or any jurisdiction you're associated with around you is looking for PPE to support those efforts, we have that available, from pappers to masks to gowns to gloves to hoodies, as well as face shields and goggles. So looking to find a new home for some of that stuff. The biggest push is on the FEMA public assistance PPE that we purchased, because when the incident's over, we cannot house that. We have to give it out to the jurisdictions to use, or we get to write FEMA a check for the stuff that we're holding on to. That's the current rules, the current standing. We'll see how things change over the next several months. COVID has created a lot of federal changes in the way that the recovery efforts are permitted, allowed, and funded. So we'll see how they continue to change as we move forward. So our current timeline is July 1, this Thursday, we're going to transition some of the resource ordering over to the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. Nothing changes for you. You're going to continue to use the resource request form. You're going to continue to submit it to the logisticsndem@gmail.com email address. We're going to invite them and add them to the people that review those emails, and they're going to start to take control of some of those efforts, and we're going to help train them, support them over the next several months. We're hoping in September, as the National Guard goes away, that's their cutoff, September 13th, that by that point, Division of Public and Behavioral Health is comfortable in those efforts, and they're going to take over all of that warehouse management of the PPE at that time. When the National Guard goes away, that's the permanent Title 32 that we've been under 100% reimbursement. So we're making a change ahead of that schedule. We're putting the National Guard people on DEM contracts. They're going to be civilian contracts. They start next week, July 8th, and they'll no longer be guys and gals in green. They'll be in civilian clothes working for us and no longer under National Guard orders, so that we can continue the process with the people who are there and hopefully not skip a beat on any resource orders that come in through you. So basically everything that you're seeing and doing won't change. It's just going to be a change on the backside. Similar to DEM switching from DPS to National Guard, this is a transition from DEM support to public health preparedness support in PPE operations. So you're not going to see or feel an impact of it. It's just how we're funding things, how we're manning things, and where we're going to be distributing the PPE out of. So the big change is no delivery vehicles pretty much after July. We're going to be looking at, if you need PPE, we're going to have to work with you to come pick it up. trying to support the cutting away of the National Guard efforts as they're downsizing and going into training to deploy around the world. So we're losing a lot of the resources that we currently have. So again, hopefully you don't see much impact at all. If you do, you have my name and number. We can work through the issues that you're having. And I'm open for any questions on the warehouse plan. This will be published so that everybody can see it. We're still waiting on comments between leadership on both health, purchasing, and DEM, as well as the little intricacies inside of the plan to make sure everybody's on board before we release it to everyone. And it will be released out on our listserv so everybody has it available.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Anybody needs a couple of 100,000 gallons? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item number 16. This is tribal updates, discussion only. Tribal representatives will be given the opportunity to provide an update on any initiatives, projects, current events, or upcoming training opportunities related to emergency management within the tribal jurisdictions. Tribal updates discussed have been provided to DEM prior to this meeting for transparency. Any update provided that was not submitted in advance of this meeting may not be heard by NTECC under this agenda item. Tribal updates will be heard from the following tribes, and I believe we have an agenda item issue here. We have Melinda, but she's already given her report, so I'm going to skip that one. And we'll go to number B, or letter B. This is the introduction of Ken, the emergency manager of the Washoe Tribe in Nevada and California. So, Ken, I believe you're on. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ken Quiner with the Washoe Tribe of Nevada, California. I just wanted to put this on the agenda so I can reach out and say hello and invite anyone who has any comments or ideas or thoughts to share with me. My contact information is provided. Please reach out to me if you want to just chit chat or talk emergency management. I look forward to meeting everybody and sharing ideas and plans. Thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome, and welcome to the committee. We've appointed you to serve on NTECC in place of Lisa. So we're looking forward to seeing you more often and hearing from you a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to item number 17. This is public comment for discussion only. No action may be taken upon the matter, just like we talked about before. If you're on the phone and want to do public comment, it is *6 to unmute yourself. Is there any closing public comment? I'm going to open this for a second in case you're following along in their live YouTube channel right now and you'd like to call in, and you're calling in on that number, and you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. And seeing no public comment and no one unmuting, I'll close this agenda item. We'll go to item number 16, which is a motion for adjournment. This is for discussion, possible action. I'll take a motion for adjournment from anybody that'd like to end the meeting.
I make that motion, Mr. Ross Rivera.
Ross, at first from Ross to say we should go home. Do we have a second from you?
Well, soon.
This is Ken Quiner for the record, Washoe Indian Tribe. I'll second it.
Thank you, Ken. At first and a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone that wants to stick around on the meeting longer, say no. Thank you very much. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for a great meeting and a lot of participation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.